You've been fed Olympic fairy tales, and guess who shoved them down your throat? Blame Victorian historians and the International Olympic Committee for whitewashing ancient Greeks as peace-loving gym bros. It's time to torch the olive branch myth for good. Everyone buys the lie ancient Olympics were a kumbaya moment of city-states holding hands in harmony. Nope. Thank the late 19th century reboot by Pierre de Coubertin and his Victorian crew, with Hollywood riding shotgun in movies like Chariots of Fire. The truth. The ancient games resembled the Hunger Games, not a group hug. Sure, the Echacheria truce appears on 5th century BCE inscriptions, but it was just travel insurance, not a ceasefire. Elis and Pisa brawled over hosting rights, while Athens and Sparta made it downright bloody. Pausanias and Xenophon expose rampant cheating and Pancratian fights, spilling into brutal street brawls all documented in the 6th century BCE. If you believed olive wreath stopped wars, you might as well try ending Twitter feuds with a salad bar. Olympic peace is Victorian fantasy, don't fall for the hooey. While the Olympics emphasized peace and unity, the gladiator games reflected a more violent aspect of ancient competition. You've been hoodwinked by Hollywood's bloodthirst. Gladiators were not cannon fodder unless you rely on blockbuster myths and popcorn flicks. Every film slathers Roman arenas in endless slaughter, turning victims into walking shish kebabs for cheap thrills. Blame Victorian pulp writers and directors for this gory fairy tale. Russell Crowe, your sword is forged from pure celluloid lies. Here's the real scoop. Graffiti uncovered in Pompeii during the 1970s digs celebrated gladiators like sports legends, praising skill way more than kill counts. Need solid proof. 1st century records from the Ludus Magnus school show insane sums spent training these superstars. No one blows fortunes to watch investments die round one. Fights. Often closer to scripted WWE than ruthless roulette referees, medics, organized schools, all part of the game. If death were constant, Rome would have ground through gladiators faster than a stadium gobbles nachos on game day. If you believed every gladiator died, welcome to getting body slammed by brutal truth. Unlike the deadly fate often met in gladiator fights, Sparta cultivated disciplined athletes and warriors, focusing their training primarily on boys. You've been fed lies, big ones. Hollywood and those Victorian fuddy-duddies shoved the myth that only Spartan boys pumped iron and crushed obstacle courses. Mention Spartan girls, and suddenly it's radio silence, almost like they want you to think girls just sat twiddling thumbs while brothers built six-packs. That's a fairy tale straight from sword and sandals flicks and prudish 19th century scholars. Seriously, when was the last time you saw a Spartan girl in a cape out sprinting her brother on screen? The cold, hard truth from ancient sources shatters that myth. Plutarch's 1st century Life of Lycurgus praises girls wrestling, racing, and throwing discus alongside boys. Archaeology from the late 20th century uncovered female athletic figurines and votive offerings, clear evidence girls weren't hiding in the gym shadows. If you swallowed the lie that Spartan girls skipped training, congratulations, you just got played by the historical version of women can't do pull-ups. Beyond the rigorous training of Spartan youth, other ancient sports like chariot racing were perceived by some as mere entertainment. Hollywood lied chariot racing wasn't a wholesome NASCAR on sand. If you believed those epic movies or lazy tour guides, think again. Chariot racing was brutal blood sport, Vegas-style rigging, and utter chaos, fueled by Rome's own circus of corruption. The myth. Chariot races were light-hearted entertainment, just horses, heroes, and high-speed glory, like Ben-Hur without the shattered bones. Blame fancy Hollywood budgets and squeaky-clean Victorian historians for wiping out the sleaze and riots. But look at the 4th century betting ledgers and graffiti gambling so insane it put modern Vegas to shame, with cultish factions like the Blues and Greens turning deadly over race outcomes. One early 5th century Roman legal code even spelled out strict punishments for charioteers sabotaging wheels or poisoning rivals' horses, definitely not family-friendly. Archaeologists uncovered curse tablets at Circus Maximus' ancient fans, literally praying for drivers' doom. If you've ever cursed your fantasy football nemesis, Rome invented the game permanently etched in lead. So if you still call chariot racing mere entertainment, congratulations, you just bought a ticket to Rome's wildest, bloodiest conspiracy circus worth a twisted mix of Game of Thrones, Vegas mob wars, and the Fast and the Furious. Although chariot races seemed just fast-paced fun, other events involved athletes competing in the nude, a practice neither shameful nor rare in ancient times. Hollywood and history lied to you. Ancient Greeks were not prudes. Nudity wasn't just common, it was the main spectacle. If you believed showing skin at the Olympics was scandalous, you've been bamboozled by Renaissance painters and Victorian historians who plastered togas on every statue to cover up a truth they couldn't handle. Check Greek pottery from the 6th century BCE. Those red figure vases scream naked athletes. Herodotus and other 5th century BCE writers confirm it. Athletes competed totally nude. There's even a specific term, gymnos, meaning naked. Remember Orsippus, the 6th century BCE runner who won immortal fame for ripping off his shorts mid-race. That's real historical defiance, not modern spin. Covering up only became the Romans' dour new trend. Ancient Greeks reveled in it. So if you think Greek athletes blushed at nudity, congrats, you just got played by Victorian censorship redux. Modern gym dress codes. The Greeks would roast that as the ultimate fashion fail of civilization. Competing naked was a proud tradition, and victors earned more than just olive wreaths, they won everlasting honor. Hollywood lied to you. Ancient Olympic champions didn't just get a wreath and eternal glory. Victorian classicists and those syrupy sword and sandal flicks sold you a sanitized fairy tale portraying the games as a no-bling handshake for your country affair. Think ancient Greeks humbly accepting olive crowns with zero perks. Think again. 2nd century writer Pausanias, in his description of Greece, exposes the truth victorious athletes hauled in serious cash from their city-states' piles of drachmas, not just victory songs. Surviving payout records from 5th century Delphi and Athens reveal insane bonuses, lifetime pensions, tax exemptions, even VIP theater seats. Milo of Croton wasn't just a strongman. He was an ancient influencer, cashing in endorsements and free dinners. If you believe these champs only earned a leafy tiara, congrats, you just rooted for the unpaid intern of sports history. The real Olympics. They invented the gold medal hustle centuries before Adidas showed up. While Olympic winners gained glory through sportsmanship, Roman games often descended into chaotic and brutal spectacles. Hollywood lied. Gladiator battles were not wild free-for-alls. Victorian historians who never cracked the actual arena rulebook fueled this myth. The Colosseum wasn't some Thunderdome riot, it was more like a Sunday league game with murder and a strict referee. If you believe those blockbuster movies, lurid novels, and over-the-top oil paintings showing random bloodbath chaos, you've been duped. Russell Crowe didn't create that havoc, he just sold a juicy lie. Here's the truth. 1st century inscribed stone tablets from the Colosseum actually spell out detailed arena rules, ancient sports regulations. Referees called summa rudis, immortalized in Pompeii mosaics, ruled the sand, signaling fouls with their hands. Certain weapons and moves were banned outright. Even Pompeii's graffiti complains about bad referee calls. Some winners didn't get a kill, they had to appeal for rematches. Imagine that drama. So if you thought ancient Rome was an everyman for himself bloodbath, congratulations, you just got gladiatored. Believe it or not, those gladiators followed rules stricter than your local dodgeball league. In fact, more than some modern MMA matches. Despite misconceptions of Roman games as lawless, even so-called barbarians engaged with and valued organized sports. You've been duped into believing barbarians were just sweaty, mindless thugs who couldn't tell a stadium from a slaughterhouse. Blame Victorian historians and every single Hollywood epic that swapped ancient arenas for chaotic stampedes. The widespread lie. So-called barbarian tribes like the Celts and Germanic peoples supposedly despised or outright avoided organized sports, portrayed as uncivilized savages with zero interest in games. 19th century British scholars pushed this myth hard, idolizing Rome as the only sporty civilization and painting all non-Romans as primitive party crashers. Hollywood eagerly ran with it because endless brawls sell better than ancient cricket leagues. But here's where they got it dead wrong. Archaeologists excavating burial mounds across 19th century Germany and Britain unearthed gaming sets, balls, and grave goods, screaming Iron Age Olympics. The Hochdorf chieftain's grave, found in 1978, revealed a decorated staff now recognized as a proto-sports bat and stone gaming pieces. Tacitus, writing in the 1st century, explicitly states Germanic tribes loved physical contests and solved disputes through athletic trials. If you believe tailgate parties got wild, picture Iron Age chariot races, bring your own mead and antler helmet. Still think only Romans loved sports? Congratulations, you just swallowed Victorian fake news hook, line, and sinker. Though some believe these groups avoided sports, ancient athletic activities often came with risks that could harm participants' health. Hollywood lied to you with their sweaty slow-mo epics, and dusty Victorians' ancient sports were not brutal, bone-shattering bloodbaths. If you believed that, you've been fed a century-old myth. Victorian historians obsessed over the idea of noble savagery, turning every toga wearer into a crash test dummy for epic violence. But 5th century BC medical texts, like the Hippocratic Corpus, basically a paleo-wellness blog from ancient Greece, offered athletes detailed meal plans and workout routines. Archaeologists have uncovered gymnasia outfitted with luxurious bathing suites and bronze massage tools, not the Colosseum, but more like an ancient equinox with extra olive oil. Professional trainers called pedo tribes meticulously tracked rest and muscle recovery. So if you thought ancient athletes just smashed each other for kicks, wake up, you've been hoodwinked by the world's longest-running gym scam, like believing your Fitbit counts steps during sleep. Nevertheless, many ancient athletes were celebrated as heroic figures, admired for their strength and prowess despite the dangers. You've been duped by Hollywood and museum gift shop myths. Ancient athletes weren't flawless gods descended from Olympus. They were the drama-filled TikTokers of their era, not your marble-carved superheroes. If you believed ancient athletes were untouchable legends, worshipped and immortalized without fault, think again. Blame cheesy classic movies, outdated high school textbooks, and those pristine museum statues for pushing the demigod athlete lie. Here's a brutal truth bomb. Archaeologists uncovered snarky graffiti at Olympia, dating back to the 3rd century BCE, mocking athletes for losing, cheating, and shameless flexing, like ancient Twitter beef carved into temple walls. The 7th century BCE Greek poet Hesiod even slammed athletes as lazy, greedy schemers. Olympic records from antiquity reveal multiple bans for cheating and foul play. So if you thought those ancient jocks were Instagram-perfect gods, you've just swallowed classical influencer PR hook, line, and sinker. Next time you see a statue, imagine it accompanied by a savage roast thread underneath. Hollywood lied these were messy, flawed humans just like us. These revered athletes contrast sharply with gladiators, whose fate was thought to be dictated by the crowd's thumbs gesture. Hollywood lied to you and maybe even your Latin teachers about Romans and their so-called talkative thumbs. That legendary thumbs down means kill him move. Total fiction, pure movie smoke, not ancient gladiator law. Think about every bloodthirsty crowd in gladiator or Victorian theater's emperors flashing thumbs down to signal death. This myth exploded thanks to lazy 19th century translators and directors obsessed with dumbed-down signals. The brutal truth. Roman historian Suetonius, writing in the early 2nd century, mentions pollis verso with turned thumb, but never specifies which way. Actual artifacts, like the 4th century's Liten mosaic from Libya, show fists or flat hands, not flashy thumbs. Some sharp historians armed with mosaics and cold logic argue that a thumbs up actually meant finish him, while a concealed thumb meant mercy. So the innocent thumbs up that people spam on YouTube today. In ancient Rome, that gesture would have sealed your fate. If you believed that Hollywood thumbs down myth, imagine what other lies you swallow without question. While gladiator contests involved dire judgments, the Olympic truce promoted peace, halting conflicts during the games. You've been flat out lied to by your high school textbooks and every single Olympic ceremony speech, the myth that ancient Greeks declared a sacred Olympic truce and halted all their wars. Blame Victorian-era historians for spinning that fairy tale. The brutal truth, Greek city-states treated the Olympic truce like a shrug. A polite, maybe well show up unless slaughtering rivals sounds more entertaining. If you pictured toga-clad athletes skipping hand-in-hand to Olympia, swords down, smiles up, think again. Thucydides, the legendary 5th century BCE historian, didn't buy this nonsense. He openly documented Sparta launching attacks smack dab in the middle of supposed truce periods. Not exactly kumbaya over the discus. Archaeologists excavating Olympia in the 1990s uncovered fortresses and hidden weapons caches dating to those very truce years, proof the gods weren't refereeing peace talks. So if you believe the Olympics magically stopped all conflicts, congratulations, you just fell for history's version of a corporate out-of-office auto-reply. It's like expecting social media to stop drama, pure fantasy. Even with such significant efforts toward peace, Greek society imposed strict bans on women's participation in sports. You've been fed a massive lie by old textbooks, and Hollywood Greek women were total couch potatoes, banned from all sports. Blame the Victorians, the stiff-collared gents of the 19th century, for painting ancient women as fragile ornaments, too delicate to break a sweat, let alone compete. If you believe this, you just swallowed a Victorian fairy tale designed to glorify their good old days. Picture this: Greek women trapped behind columns while men chased Olympic glory. Wrong. Archaeological digs at Olympia in the 1930s shattered this myth, uncovering female athlete figurines and 6th century BC grave goods, including running shoes clearly sized for women. Check out the Olympia Museum. Pausanias, the 2nd century AD travel writer, details the Heraean Games, a full-blown women's Olympics held on the same dirt track as the men's. Ancient art. It's loaded with images of women vaulting hurdles and spinning discs, not just sitting and weaving. See the National Archaeological Museum, Athens. If you think ancient Greek women never worked up a sweat, congratulations, you just got punked by Victorian dads who probably would have fainted at the sight of a sports bra. It's like believing cats are secret agents, absurd and totally false. Despite these restrictions, some enduring athletic traditions like the marathon originated from ancient Greece. You've been flat out deceived. Your gym teacher, Olympic organizers, and every feel-good sports documentary are part of the cover-up. The modern marathon is not a sacred relic from ancient Greece. It's a Victorian Frankenstein monster stitched together by ambitious 19th century British historians and Olympic PR hacks. Everyone parrots that marathons recreate the heroic sprint from Marathon to Athens, cue the corny soundtracks and teary finish lines. But here's the dirt: blame the late 19th century British Olympic Committee for crafting the drama, rules, and distance. Hollywood just keeps feeding you the fairy tale. Herodotus, the definitive 5th century BCE historian, never even mentions a heroic last-ditch run. His story tells of Pheidippides jogging from Athens to Sparta over twice the marathon's length in a diplomatic relay, not a desperate death dash. The exact marathon distance, pulled out of thin air in 1908 so British royals could watch the finish line from their palace windows. So the next time you suffer through mile 20, remember, you're not tapping into ancient Greek valor, you're starring in a royal-themed Victorian cosplay. If you crave true Greek authenticity, lace up for 60 miles and pack some snacks. If you believe the movies, think again. This race is Victorian PR theater disguised as ancient legend. While the marathon reflected endurance and spirit, ancient boxing was known for its brutality and danger. You've been flat out lied to by every sword and sandals flickin' lazy Victorian-era history documentary. Ancient boxing wasn't just savage warriors smashing skulls for fun. Hollywood and those 19th century armchair historians want you imagining endless bloody brawls and gladiators treating bones like toothpicks. But the brutal reality: picture Olympic wrestling with a snarky gym coach as a judge and real rules that actually mattered. If you believed ancient bouts were non-stop brain-bashing chaos, here's the bombshell: archaeologists excavating Oxyrhynchus in Egypt uncovered genuine leather boxing gloves dating back to the 4th century BC. Not death-dealing wraps, not crude knuckle dusters, actual gloves. And the 3rd century BC Greek treatise on athletics lays down ironclad rules: no eye gouging, no biting. Those refs weren't a thirsty emperor. Imagine Joe Rogan wearing a laurel wreath, cracking down hard. Sometimes both fighters even walked away with their noses intact because ancient Greeks preferred preserving your mug. Thank you very much. So if you swallowed the pure carnage myth hook, line, and sinker, Hollywood owes you a massive apology and probably a crash helmet to match. It's like expecting The Office, but getting a UFC cage fight. Even in such fierce competitions, ancient sports maintained ideals of fairness and attempts to prevent cheating. Hollywood lied. The ancient Olympics were far from pure, cheat-free fun. If you believe those noble toga wearers played clean, think again. Victorian historians and movies like Chariots of Fire sold you a fairy tale of muscle, sand, and virtue. No steroids, no bribes, only honorable olive crowns. Reality check 5th century BC Delphi stone inscriptions publicly shame athletes caught cheating, carved like ancient Twitter scandals. Some were exiled for life, no second chances, just eternal disgrace. You can still see their names at the Delphic Archaeological Museum. Pausanias, writing in the 2nd century AD, describes judges bribed left and right, and athletes downing ancient power potions that make today's doping scandals look tame. Still think Olympic cheating is a modern invention? If so, you're about as clueless as someone watching WWE for genuine sportsmanship.